Says President Obama can look to Jefferson, Lincoln, FDR, and even to Europe for ideas and insight into rebuilding the nation's infrastructure. Ambassador Rohatyn is the president of Rohatyn Associates, also former managing partner at Lazard Frères. Ambassador Rohatyn, you say the country's almost literally falling apart. So what should be done?
Well, we should have, first of all, we have to be able to afford a program of reconstruction, if you will. And it probably should be better structured than what we're doing today, because what we're doing today is essentially leaving it to the states to determine what the infrastructure should be and how much it should be and how it should be organized. And a number of people have recently, a couple of people in the Congress, a couple of senators, a couple of congressmen, that we should have a separate freestanding bank for infrastructure. And that bank should obviously work with the administration with respect to the priorities and what's invested, but it should be run independently without all the earmarks that we're having these days. Be part of the budget, but have a capital budget instead of treating everything like an expense. I mean, a dam is not toilet paper. It's a real thing, and it should be treated as such. It isn't in the government's budget practices. Take investments in infrastructure and treat it as if it were an expense. And of course, then you run way down in terms of what you think you can afford, because you're not taking the right charges in terms of depreciation, etc.
How bad does it have to get in order for this to actually come to fruition?
Well, it seems to me that it's pretty bad. I mean, I think a lot of people think it's very, very bad. I mean, you talk to the governors, Governor Randall in Pennsylvania, Governor Schwarzenegger, Mayor Bloomberg, and they will tell you what the state of the infrastructure is. And I'm sure that that's also the view of President Obama. But there are always other people in other states, other groups in the Congress that have other projects, and that leads to ultimately not having anything right.
Could you also make the argument, though, that it's a cultural issue? I mean, what makes it so different here in the United States, let's say, versus what goes on in Europe?
Well, in France, for instance, you go to one of the big railroad stations, one of the big stations in Paris, and you see 5 or 6 very, very modern trains that are waiting to leave, and on everybody you have a sign, and it says Paris Munich 2¼ hours, Paris London 2½ hours, and these trains are absolutely on time. They're very, very comfortable. And they go twice as fast as the train between here and Washington. There's no reason for that. But it's there in France. Essentially, the railroads, for instance, infrastructure is a central government duty. Yeah,
but I mean, you just mentioned. But we started off the program talking about military spending, and when you look at total spending on the military as a total percentage of GDP in the United States versus what they spend, let's say, in France, in Germany, is that really where the money has to come from? I mean, where is the money going to show up?
Well, in Europe, you have something called the European Investment Bank. And that is a bank that raises money for all of the members of the EU to finance their infrastructure, among other things. And the bank sells bonds, and the bonds are used by the governments or by the agencies that operate these things to finance their infrastructure. And whether it's a train, whether it's a tunnel through the Alps, or whether it's a harbor, it is all determined by government policy. Here, you don't have government policy. You have 15 policies, and you have competition among different members of Congress on who's going to get a little more money than the next to finance this, and without any plan, any real national plan, either to do this nationally or to do it regionally. But there's very little cooperation among that I've seen among various state agencies and federal agencies to determine the priorities and oversee the investment.
So where does the leadership for a plan like this come from? I mean, don't you need a leader, person to actually take responsibility?
Certainly. But if if they were to do what we're talking about here, say to create a development bank for infrastructure, and the president would appoint the head of that agency, and there would be a board of directors appointed by the Senate and the House, and the appropriation would be made by the Congress, and you would have something that looks and feels and is an agency that is controlled and that is efficient and that gives us the biggest bang for the buck.
Are we in a situation where we can not afford to do this?
I think we've been in a situation where we couldn't afford to do this for quite a while. But absolutely. Absolutely.
Can we do this and pay for health care and pay for military spending and pay for all the programs that is on
well, we can't do it. I mean, you'll have different priorities. I mean, you have to do these things, but you don't have to do them in the amounts that you might want to do it. And different pressures, whether you're doing healthcare or whether you're doing infrastructure.
All right. I want to thank you very much, Ambassador Felix Rohatyn, coming in and sharing your thoughts about infrastructure and the need to replace it. Thank you very much for your thoughts.